So I've got, bear with me guys, I have two of myself looking at me while I'm doing this meeting. So I'm gonna step over to the side. So I'm Becky Leinert. You guys are all new, you weren't at our last meeting, so hello, welcome. And this is Drew over here. He's our vice president / treasurer, possibly. We'll see, and this is Candace back here. She's our secretary. And tonight is kind of a, really just kind of a check-in meeting, just to kind of see how things are, gather some more input, and start to kind of formalize our plans a little bit more about what we're going to do with the community. I've been kind of quiet on Facebook the last couple of weeks, if you guys have probably noticed, and there was a method to the madness because I wanted to see what the district was coming out with. And they've come out with quite a bit. There's some links, if you got the agenda towards the bottom, there's some really important links, and I'll put them in the Facebook group and also on our website later. But basically, the district has now put out some information to kind of give some substance to why they're wanting to close the school, and just in general the plans that they've got for the Project for Success Committee and kind of what's going on with all of that. So I just want to kind of walk everybody through this a little bit, and I'll try and share my screen, possibly, for those that are watching online. I wish I could show you guys the video. But basically, what I caught was actually an article on the Derby Informer by Mr. Wilford, the superintendent, that basically was letting everybody know that there is a website that you can go to now. You can go to derbyschools.com, and then in the menu there's Project for Success. And basically, you know, it's a short kind of synopsis of what they've gone over, who's been involved, what they've been doing since March, to kind of figure out. And it's long-term planning. It's not anything unusual. This is something that every school district, a decent school district, should be going through, kind of looking at, you know, needs of the district now, but also projecting and trying to cover bases as much as possible. So it's a good thing that the Project for Success Committee has met and that there's a recommendation. What we disagree with is some of the recommendations. So on the Project for Success website, you go to derbyschools.com, and it's on the top menu, Project for Success. Basically, it says, you know, the upcoming community meetings that they're going to be gathering this feedback. And basically, let me back up a little bit. The Project for Success Committee started meeting in March, and they talked about all kinds of different things, from needs of the elementary schools, deferred maintenance, boiler problems, that kind of thing, all the way to administrative buildings, administrative needs, bus maintenance, different things like that. So it's like a long-term overarching thing for the entire district. It's not just about the elementary schools or what they're going to do at the high school or anything like that. So the committee met, they looked at all the buildings. There's an architectural firm that's been working with the district to make recommendations and say, okay, this is really what needs to be done. This is the best way of going about doing it, that kind of thing. So the committee formalized their proposal, and they submitted it to the board earlier in December. And that's where this group came out of after that, because the proposal has been made, and there's some suggestions that don't necessarily make sense, we don't necessarily agree with. But from that, once the proposal is made, it's up to this committee to go out to the community to gather feedback. Just because they made the proposal doesn't mean that it's set in stone, doesn't mean that they're going to close the school or that they're going to build a turf field or anything like that at the high school. It's just suggestion at this point, what the committee thinks is best. And then they'll go back to the community. There's a couple of community meetings which are on your agenda as well. There's a couple of community meetings where the Project for Success Committee is going to be gathering feedback from the community about what we think of their proposals. And, you know, it's again for the entire plan, not just the part that we're so focused on. So that will be happening Tuesday, January 24th. They're going to be meeting at Cooper Elementary, because again, this isn't just involving Pleasant View, it's involving Cooper and Oaklawn as well, because part of their plan is to close Cooper Elementary and demolish the old parts of Oaklawn and build a brand new school, which would have 4 classes per grade level at that school. So it would be combining Cooper and Oaklawn together at the Oaklawn site. So they're going to be meeting over there so that it's not just only within the city of Derby. They're trying to include, you know, people that are still within the Derby school district but don't necessarily live within the city limits. So the first meeting is Tuesday, January 24th at Cooper. The next one is going to be the 26th, which is a Thursday at the Derby High School here. And that's going to be for, you know, either of these meetings or for anybody to attend to give community feedback. One of the things that I'm not real certain about is what's going to happen at this meeting. I know that they're going to be discussing, you know, this is our proposal and this is why kind of thing, but I don't really know how much opportunity we're going to have for feedback, but that's the intention of this meeting. And that's one of the things that I'm going to be trying to find out is, you know, what's the format of the meeting so that we can get the most out of it. But we want to make sure that, you know, we have a lot of different opinions about closure, about the proposals, you know, how the money should be spent, period. We want to make sure that we are getting our message across in the best way, being heard, but also, you know, having the opportunity to share our message and not just coming across as people that are complaining. So I'm going to be doing my best to find out what the actual format of this is going to be so that we can come across in a way that's actually going to be beneficial. After those meetings, the committee is going to meet again, and then on February 13th, they're going to be making their formal presentation, their formal recommendation to the board saying, you know, we went out to the community, we gathered this feedback, this is what we think. So that February 13th board meeting, that's going to be at Park Hill. That's going to be an important board meeting as well. So that's just kind of the overall process and how things are going. And you can look on this site. There's a lot of different suggestions that are happening. You know, they're talking about settlements, and they've got a nice like slideshow thing on the district website that shows, you know, the different problems at the schools that are going on, older buildings, things like that. Then they also have a flyer that kind of breaks everything down, which actually on their website, it's kind of cut off a little bit. I've been able to get the full copy of it. I'll put it on the SaveDerbySchools.com website. Basically, it kind of outlines what the district is planning or what the Project for Success Committee is proposing. And this is what they're going to be gathering feedback on. And then the district also has a frequently asked questions page, which I'll touch on in a moment. Then they have a feedback form to gather community feedback directly on the website, so you don't have to attend the meetings necessarily if you don't want to, in theory. But the community feedback form, I'll show you the form here, and I'll show you guys the form. It is really simple. It's 2 questions. What do you like about the proposal? What do you not like about the proposal, and why? That's not very substantive feedback if you ask me. So that's part of what our mission is to make sure that we're gathering good feedback and we're giving good suggestions and good opinions about what we would like to see happen. So getting into the nitty-gritty details of this a little bit, and the frequently asked questions section on the site is really long. It's linked on the agenda for today. But there's a lot of different questions on here, and the one that, you know, is most interesting to me at this point was the reasoning for closing Pleasant View. Cooper, I think, has been explained. You know, one of the things that doesn't make sense, and you know, the big push for this committee and the district overall is safety, wanting to make sure that there is a storm shelter at each of these schools, and that's important. I mean, we want our kids to be safe, and we've had elementary schools hit by tornadoes. Thankfully, no kids were there at the time, but you know, let's have them be as safe as possible. But one of the things that doesn't much make sense, and Mr. Wilford spoke about this at the Pleasant View Site Council meeting last month, is that Cooper has a ridiculously amazing storm shelter. He said it's the way that it's built. It was built by government funding as grant money that allows people to stay in there for 3 days. Like, it will recycle water and everything. And we have this available. Why are we leaving that to move everybody over to a different school? So there's just a lot of things that don't much make sense. And one of the questions on here is, why did the initial proposal recommend to close Pleasant View instead of upgrading it with renovations? And there's several different things on here. Basically, you know, general inefficiencies with older buildings, such as less flexibility for changing curriculum, costly and continual infrastructure maintenance and renovations and additions, requiring costly building code upgrades to the entire structure. Basically, Pleasant View is an older building. There's lots of older buildings within the district. Swaney is 1 year younger than Pleasant View, and that definitely raises a lot of questions. One of the things that Pleasant View has kind of going against it is the location of the building. It is on a smaller acreage than what the rest of the district is. Mr. Wilford says, you know, there's a recommendation to have 8 acres. Pleasant View has just under 5, which does cause problems for parking. The way that the existing building is laid out, there's not really a whole lot of room to add parking. There's some changes that can be made. but there's some improvements that would need to be made. One of the things on here is that Pleasant View costs quite a bit more to run versus the other elementary schools. It says inefficiencies of operation, including current and future maintenance and utility costs. For example, Pleasant View's gas bill is over twice the cost of other elementary schools and 3 times the cost of a new school of a comparable size. So that's expensive. I mean, we all have our own bills. Of course, you're going to do whatever you can to try and limit your bills. So that's something that they are looking at logistics, trying to figure out the best way of making district money go in the most beneficial ways. And that's important. I mean, it's a good thing for the district to be looking at this realistically. One of the other pieces on here is a reason is Pleasant View is a 2-section building, meaning there's 2 classes per grade level. And the other elementary schools are either 3 sections or 4 sections, 3 to 4 classes per grade level, which is obviously a much larger elementary school. Pleasant View is a 2-section school. And in order to replace Pleasant View, they're saying there's a cost of about $14 million versus closing the school and increasing capacity at the other schools would cost about $5.5 million. That's a big cost difference. Really, it is. But there's more to it than just looking at the numbers. And that's something that I see glossed over quite a bit in this frequently asked questions document and just in general in hearing explanations from the district. What is the soft side of this? What's the people side of this? How's the community going to be affected? What's it like to have a child who's used to a smaller school attending a school that has 400 to 500 students versus like 300? And that's the size of the schools that we're looking at if Pleasant View is to close. Because El Paso is slated to be at capacity within 5 years. And as long as I'm understanding the documentation correctly, that would be before they go and add additional students to it. So El Paso is already going to be at capacity on its own within 5 years. What's the plan? How are these students going to be taken care of? Pleasant View is a title school, which entitles these students to additional funding and resources and people help, which is something that this community and this school population needs. How are these needs going to be met within the other schools? And what I keep seeing repeatedly here is an overall look at logistics. And this isn't just a logistics problem, this is a people problem. So that's where we have a lot of questions of how are we going to be taking care of these kids? What's it gonna look like, you know, between Derby Hills, El Paso, and Park Hill to have, you know, 500 plus students. And on the flyer that the district has put out, it says a maximum of 25 students per classroom. That's great. I mean, there are some classrooms at Pleasant View that are larger than that. And it's just kind of the logistical thing. I mean, even still, if there were more classrooms at Pleasant View extending, you know, if you've got 28 kids to break those into 3 classrooms versus just 2, it doesn't much make sense to have a classroom full of 10 kids. So you're going to have some larger classes, and there's going to be some logistical specifics, things like that that happen. But, you know, there's a lot of information that's come out, and I'm still kind of going through it to see where it makes most sense. But one thing that I have a question about as well is it says specifically for Pleasant View that there's new code and ordinance regulations regarding off-street parking and off-street pickup and drop-off that would require parking be added to Pleasant View that the site could not feasibly contain without purchasing the surrounding land. Now, how does that compare to the other elementary schools? I'm sure a lot of you have heard of the kid that got hit at El Paso last year. And I mean, she was just going to school. And we've heard other reports of kids that are having to be dropped off far away from El Paso because you just can't get to the school because of traffic. Now they want to go and add, you know, anywhere from 100 plus students to that, plus growth. They're anticipating another 100 plus students moving into that area within the next 5 years, not including adding the Pleasant View kids. So there's just a lot that doesn't make sense. These community involvement meetings or community feedback meetings, we're not quite sure, you know, how much reciprocation we're going to be getting. If it's just going to be, you know, we don't want these meetings to just be a complaint session, but I'm wondering if that's just what it's going to be. I really don't know. We have to find out. So our goal tonight really is to give the additional information that we've gotten now over the last couple of weeks because, you know, the district has put out a lot of info and just kind of talk about, you know, the upcoming dates where it's important that we have people there. You know, Pleasant View has The next school board meeting is going to be held at Pleasant View on January 9th. We want to have as many people there as possible, and bring your kids. You know, why not have the kids there at the school? They're going to be talking about the great things that Pleasant View is doing. It's one of the things that the school's district does with the board meetings is that they meet at the different schools, and then whatever school they're at gives like a culture report and things like that. So Pleasant View is already going to be making a report about the great things that have been happening at Pleasant View. So that's going to be there, and we can all hear great things about the school, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But then there's not really going to be a whole lot probably touched on because they haven't had those community involvement meetings just yet. But those are going to be important to attend as well. And one of the things that concerns us is I went to the site council meeting and I attended the board meeting where they formally made the proposal. And, you know, the question was asked by a couple of different board members, what are we going to do basically to inform the public, not just the people that have kids attending these schools, what are we going to do to let the community know about this? Well, we're going to have the website and people can leave feedback there, and we're going to have a couple of community involvement meetings. They specifically asked if we're going to be doing district mailers, and the answer is pretty much no. I mean, there wasn't a firm no, but there also wasn't a yes because there's costs associated with that. So one of the things that we would like to do is organize formal like canvassing, going out to neighborhoods, and not just around Pleasant View, not just around Cooper and Oaklawn, but to Park Hill and all of the other areas to let them know, hey, the district is talking about making your schools a lot bigger. Are you okay with that? You know, for me, I would much rather my kids go to a smaller school. They get much more attention that way. They're more comfortable. It's much more of a family environment versus, you know, if there's between 500 and 600 kids at the school, my kids, chances are he's going to become a number. So that's basically the point of our group and organization is to get the word out, get people at these meetings, and do whatever we can to make sure that the district is hearing our concerns and making sure that, you know, we're doing everything that we can to try and let it be known that we're not okay with this. We're not okay with the lack of information up until this point. We're not okay with, you know, this reasoning. It makes sense if you're looking at things from a logistical point, but at the same time, it's not just schools either. Pleasant View is located on the west side of Derby, which is a part of Derby you hear people talking about all the time. It's dying. And I live over there. I like that area of town. You know, it's got the little Dillons and the post office and everything is over there. And even the city is looking at making improvements along K15 in there in that corridor to make the businesses and you know, have more industry come back to that area and build it back up, you know, putting new signage, getting different, you know, different things that would be attractive to new businesses back in there so we can have everything, you know, not just being over on Rock Road anymore. So we don't want that part of the community to die. So what's going to happen if we remove this school? Not looking at the kids' effect and all of that. What's going to happen to the community? What's going to happen to the home values? What's going to happen to a lot of these other things? And not that they haven't done this research, but they're not talking about it. So what's the reasoning behind that? How is it going to affect these things? And so this is much more than just, you know, we don't want the school to close. It affects the community. It affects a lot of different things, and not just the Pleasant View area. It's pretty well Derby wide. It's not every single elementary school, but pretty close. So that is our plan, basically. And so, you know, we've gotten this information from the district. Over the next few weeks, we're wanting to do some community canvassing. And I'd love, you know, anybody who's up for helping with that, you can go to savederbyschools.com/help, submit your info, and we'll keep you posted on what's going on. And then, you know, you can check out whatever information we've got on there. Our news and media will keep updated with whatever information we find out. I'll be sharing with everybody in the Facebook group as well. So basically at this point, you know, I want to hear from you guys what suggestions you might have as we're kind of going through this to see if you have any ideas for, you know, getting the word out and going to the neighborhoods. We've talked about doing a petition as well, formalizing that, you know, taking it through, you know, if you're going to close one of our schools, give us good reasoning kind of thing. So we'll need some help gathering signatures and different things like that. But what do you guys want to know? What do you want to be done, and what do you think would be a good idea? Yeah, Shannon.
I want to know from them because on their little flyer, the process for success, they said that they put these ideas together that addresses and meets the educational expectations of our community. So what are those expectations that they use to formulate this plan? Because if you look at them, their master plan, there's really not much that addresses education. It's facilities and athletics. I
Okay.
think
Yeah.
there's one little blurb about class size and some media rooms, but not actual things about what are the educational expectations that they based these recommendations on.
Okay. Yeah. I think I know what you're talking about. They're talking about making the classroom sizes between the schools more equitable.
Right.
Yeah. And there's, I mean, I think it was Oaklawn Elementary they were talking about. I could be wrong about the school, but one of the schools had buildings or classroom sizes that were like half of that of Park Hill. And the classroom size of Park Hill, I don't remember the exact square footage, and I could be completely wrong, but I want to say it was upwards of 800, 900 square feet per classroom, which is huge. So that, I mean, that is a big discrepancy and could definitely have an effect on learning. And it's good that they're paying attention to things like that. And also, you know, not having so many kids crammed in. But I think that's probably what you were speaking to.
Yeah, I'm just curious about what their guidelines are because I sit on the school finance committee for the district for Pleasant View.
Okay.
And at the last meeting, they talked about how we haven't had new textbooks for over 10 years and how our like paras and stuff are not paid a market rate for like local districts. So they're underpaid and, you know, we have, which affects, you know, if you have good employees that can get paid better elsewhere, they're going to leave.
Sure.
And so that affects our kids' education, you know, but none of that is in this plan.
Do you happen to know if it was a district-wide thing for the new textbooks and things like that, or was it just Pleasant View?
It was district.
Okay.
They were saying it's been over 10 years.
Okay. And one of the things too that I didn't speak to earlier is the school board is elected. They are put in the position of helping and acting on our behalf. And one of those things that these school board members are responsible for is getting answers to questions. And I've got a link on the website. You can go to savederbyschools.com. And then, let's see, let your voice be heard. So savederbyschools.com/let your voice be heard. And we've got a listing of all of the school board members and their email addresses on there. And we're going to be emailing. And we need as many people to email as possible with different questions. Not necessarily, you know, we don't want the schools to close. It doesn't make sense. Give us more information. We specifically need people contacting because it's the responsibility of the school board to find out these answers. If they don't know them directly, then they can contact, you know, the superintendent and find out from him or find out, you know, whoever. So asking, you know, what are the expectations for the community and education in this bond? Because this is going to have to be a bond issue. It's not something that's just going to be, you know, put under it. And Drew had come up with a suggestion too. You know, there's a pretty wide look at this particular bond proposal. Part of it is school buildings and things like that, but then the rest of it is like athletics. And it's, you know, school size and school buildings and buildings period, and then athletic things. And you're right, there's not much on there. And, you know, you had spoken to having two different bonds. Yeah.
Yeah, my concern is just kind of looking at the way it's packaged. It's either you support football and you're going to go with whatever the school plan is, or you hate Derby.
Mm-hmm.
Because this town's football. We all know it, and that's what the town is. But if that's our choices, we don't have a choice. Because choosing to be put in a position where you can be accused of ignoring your community or closing schools, having bigger schools, bigger classes, isn't a choice. At least I don't feel it is.
Right.
So that's kind of, I dislike the way it's put together.
Mm-hmm.
I think we would be better off having the options to look at these separately because they're two completely unrelated issues.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And one of the things that I wonder about too, and this is my lack of knowledge of how these things work on a governmental level, but how do these things have to be packaged to the public? Do they have to be in off one fell swoop kind of thing, one thing at a time? Can it all be, you know, split up? I mean, I'm just not sure, but that's something to know.
I think it can be. I think the Wichita District several years ago when they had their large bond issue, they were going to have, they had two different options and then the board decided just to put everything together because they couldn't, and Wichita approved it,
Mm-hmm.
all the stuff they wanted,
Okay.
which theirs included storm shelters. They had FEMA shelters, and FEMA was supposed to help pay for it. But FEMA ran out of money, so that the district absorbed the cost.
Okay.
But I do know, because I had asked the superintendent about asking the city, like for a private-public partnership, you know, about, you know, because my house doesn't have a basement. We have a cellar, but a lot of the houses in our neighborhood don't have basements.
Right.
And, you know, looking at it that way, could the city help pay for some of it to provide a benefit for their community members? Because there's plenty of elderly people that
Right. Yeah.
use that. And Coleman Middle School, similar thing. Their FEMA shelter is open for the public. The school is not in session.
Right.
And so it's not. He seemed not super comfortable with the idea, but it is done, and it is done locally.
Yeah, I had a similar experience. The school I was student teaching at had a very similar setup. When the school wasn't in session, the storm shelter was not open because there are security concerns that definitely need to be considered. But outside of that, yeah, that's definitely something. And from it touches on another point as well on the city level. How does the city feel about this? What are the plans? So there's definitely a lot of questions in that regard as well. Yeah. Yeah.
The east side of Derby has a public storm shelter
Do they?
at Station 82.
Okay.
It's completely open. There's not one I'm aware of on the east side of town. So I don't believe Station 1, the 81's is out of has one.
Okay.
I may be wrong, but I know for certain there's one on the west side. And a lot of the, like you mentioned, a lot of the houses around Pleasant View do not have basements. Most of them are crawl spaces. A few basements have been added.
Yeah.
I know growing up over there, we had this little crawl space. Not where you want to hide.
No, not really. A place you don't want to go into. Okay, and what were you going to say?
I was just gonna ask, who is on this committee and how did they get selected to be on this?
That's something I'm not real clear about.
And kind of like, what is their knowledge base that qualifies them to say?
Yeah, so
what
it's made up.
students need or don't need?
It's made up of, and the district put out some information about this. So they do have that information on the website, and I can put it on our website with good links so that you can actually get to it as well. But it was a broad base of community people. Mrs. Rothy from Pleasant View, the principal there, was on the committee. Obviously, Mr. Wilford was on the committee. I think isn't he the president of Verus Bank or something like that? Is the steer-head of the committee?
I'm not sure.
You know, he's a CEO locally.
It's not easily accessible on the website.
It's not?
Yeah, it's.
The Derby website has some problems.
The process for success is really difficult to get through. It's in
yeah,
a few
it's
locations, not
I had a hard time finding
connected.
FAQ sections.
yeah. So that's part of the reason why we'll have this with links on our website, SavorDerbySchools.com, so that we can find it there.
And I was curious, like, what research did it, like, I work in a world where you base your practice off of evidence, and what did they use to make these recommendations as far as, you know, because when I asked at the meeting, the superintendent about students from Title I schools or students who are in poverty, which the only schools that they are affecting closing are Title I schools, all 3 of them. And he just said, well, the Gates Foundation did a study, and it doesn't matter, you know, except for that foundation study was on high schools. And it took me 2 seconds on Google to find multiple studies that, you know, it's like, so did they not look at that information?
Yeah. It's definitely something to ask at those meetings too, and school board members as well. Yeah, Drew?
I was gonna say specifically regarding the studies on I kind of looked, there's a few retrospective studies, try to draw data because there's a lot of studies on class size and school size. There's been a few studies that look over them as a whole, and they've, for the most part, determined that smaller classes lead to better outcomes through middle and high school. The differences get smaller and higher grades, but there's still some difference. And not only is it class size, but it's school size that has a large impact, because it's kind of the community thing is actually what leads to success in primary grades. That's by multiple organizations. The Gates Foundation has all kinds of data out on specifically school sizes and class sizes being small. They no longer link to any of those on their website, but the papers are published, but they've been removed. Most of the data they have currently is the role of technology in schools and supplanting education and teachers with tablets. I don't know if that's coincident with Bill Gates and Microsoft or not. Seems a little strange, but there's been that change in their projection. But they're essentially the only data that's changed is their single study. So.
Yeah, we had one question come through too from David Moore on here. If Cooper and Oaklawn combine, how will the kids north of 47th Street get to the Oaklawn campus safely? 47th is a very busy 4-lane road. Low-income families often do not have the transportation or a car to get their kids to school. There's not a sidewalk down Clifton for 47th Street, so I can't see the whole comment. So basically, I'll kind of fill in the blanks there. He's wondering, what's going to happen to the kids that are north of 47th Street? That is a very busy intersection, and it's
Especially that time of day.
right.
That spirit traffic is unreal.
Right. So is there going to be a busing situation possibly to get these kids to and from? And one of the things I know that they did in Goddard, they did some redistricting out in Goddard, and the school district made sure that they absorbed the costs because there's if you live in a certain district, just certain radius of a school, you have to provide transportation for your kids. And the kids that are north of Kellogg, even though they're within that radius, the district is still busing them across Kellogg because they don't want kids crossing Kellogg. So is that something that the district is going to be able to do? And is the district prepared to be able to bus these kids that are over closer to Pleasant View all the way over to Park Hill? Has that cost been looked at as well?
Yeah, is that not in the cost?
Not that I could see, but I could have missed it. But
That's kind of a forever cost. I mean,
it is a
we're gonna
forever
do this.
cost. It is a forever cost.
Right.
And one question that I had that I asked at the side council meeting last month of Mr. Wilford was, what's going to be done with the extra transportation and cars that are going to be at all these schools? These are neighborhood schools. El Paso's a neighborhood school. Derby Hills is a neighborhood school. Park Hill's a neighborhood school. What are we going to do? I mean, Park Hill, their area is nice and wide, and they seem to have a better setup for dropping kids off than what some of the other school locations do. But Swaney, from what I hear, is a train wreck in the mornings, and El Paso is a very congested area. Pleasant View can be as well. And they just went through, and there was a big difference by making the roads one way by Pleasant View. It was like night and day difference for pickup and drop off. I've been there 5 years in a row, and I can tell you, I was so excited for that to happen. But are they looking at these things? I asked about it, and basically the response was, well, there's traffic congestion at every school, pick up and drop off. You're not going to find a good school anywhere for that.
We've complained at Swaney because it's somewhat dangerous now.
Yeah.
The way that the traffic flow is. And
Mm-hmm.
you see kids just about getting hit every day.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of there's just
Yeah, it's kind of, from a traffic standpoint for me, I mean, I'm not taking kids over there to school, but it's kind of confusing the way that it works and the stop signs and everything. And yeah.
Well, we don't have crosswalks with lights. We don't have lights saying this is the school zone. I mean,
Mhm.
so I don't think that they're going to improve matters once these kids go to other schools, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think they're going to ship them to another school and then just say, well,
It is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Having experienced the Swaney
Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
situation.
When these sort of projects happen, school districts typically also don't include ongoing operational costs in the capital costs.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a lot of what we've been talking about.
Right.
Is there a plan in what you're doing on the website to track these kind of questions and things before the school district's not telling us things they're telling us that aren't necessarily true?
Mhm.
Because that strikes me as the kind of thing that somebody new to this is going to be most interested in finding, because they're going to be hearing from the almighty district
Right.
why this is a great idea. They're going to get it from their kids, they're going to get it from the media,
Mm-hmm.
but we need to make sure that they have ready and easy access to what they're not being told and stuff they're being told that's not true.
Yeah, I like that idea. So let me expand upon this a little bit further because, I'm building the website and I build websites for work and that's just what I do. And so I obviously have my view of the website and I think it makes sense and it's easy to use. But that's my opinion. So from you guys, I don't know if you've all been on the website, anybody over here too, what opinions, because that's definitely good to make sure that we have this like front and center on the website. What would make the most sense for somebody that hasn't heard a lot about this before, landing on the website, what's gonna be most impactful to get the message across quickly?
I would love to see, because I know Shannon went to the first meeting and told me a lot about it. I would love to see like what Wilford said.
Mhm.
And then as we've gone back, what she said, he said, we did studies and no, it's fine.
Mhm.
He said this, is that true? Yes or no?
Right.
And no, it's not true.
Mhm.
And I would love to see that, like, what was said in the meeting, is this true? Is this fact-based or not? Or what's the backup for it?
So
And
fact checking.
yes, basically fact checking, because I don't think they're gonna tell us facts, I think they're gonna tell us what they think will make us vote for their plan.
Yeah. Okay.
I kind of want like a line item of why did you choose this on the facilities plan? Like, why
Mhm.
do we need our middle school tennis courts lighted?
Mhm.
Why do we need this or this?
Yeah.
Because
What is the booster clubs paid for? Like, that's kind of like,
That was
I
my
thought that's
question about
kind of what
football.
the booster clubs
Mhm.
were for, but I could be wrong. That's what my understanding was, that we have those booster clubs to help pay for those things for those clubs. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody here has that answer, or like, I don't know. If that's the case, then that solves our problem with athletics compared to the.
Yeah. Well, and I wonder too, I'll get to you in just a second. I wonder too, with the repairs and things that need to be made to the stadiums, how much of this could actually be community funded and not necessarily be something that has to be done by a bond issue?
It's 50 cents a ticket.
Yeah.
Is the stadium ever empty?
Yeah. Yeah. Candace.
Back to issues of parking.
Yeah.
We were and congestion around the school. We were at El Paso last year when the child was hit, and they have a specific plan in place on how to drop the kids off. They're very communicative about how their plan works and how to keep them safe. But even with those plans in place,
Mhm.
that child was hit, and it's because of all of the congestion and all of the cars. I mean, you have cars parked down every neighborhood street lining El Paso. I mean,
Mhm.
they're all completely full, and that's at pickup and at drop off. It's insane. It is very, very congested. So I'm just saying, because I've been there, I've had the experience at that school, and what I would have to go back to, because I'm transferred in from that school.
Mhm.
So I'd have to go back to that situation, and although they try to put plans in place, the problem is the amount
Right.
of people, the amount of cars that are there. If you're gonna add another 50 cars, another 100 cars, that's just gonna make the problem 100 times more.
Right. Well, and chances are, these kids coming from Pleasant View, it's probably going to be cars. Because my kindergartner is not going to walk almost a mile to school there and back. I'm not going to have them do that.
No.
So definitely, yeah. True.
Say another, they're talking about the site locations. A challenge with El Paso that I think contributes to the child getting hit over there is a large portion of school year, you're blinded eastbound in the morning by the sun.
Yeah.
We can't fix that by having a bigger lot.
Mhm.
That's not gonna move the road. We've got one there and one, a couple of Pleasant View, so we're both schools, and that's dangerous. I get uncomfortable driving eastbound
Mhm.
through there because you were absolutely blinded.
Yeah, that is very
And
true.
That's not gonna
That's the main
change.
entrance into the school too,
Mhm.
off of Woodlawn.
Yeah, it will not change.
Yeah. I have that experience going down. I go down Baltimore and then I hang a right onto Greenway?
Yeah.
Greenway. And I have that same experience, just kind of like,
But Greenway does not seem to have 1,000 kids crossing it
no.
like you have in El Paso.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point. So this is the kind of dialogue that's really important, and getting this feedback from more people than just those that are going to be affected if Pleasant View closes. Because, I could bet that the parents at Park Hill and the parents at Derby Hills and the parents at El Paso are going to have something to say about whether or not they want their schools to be as large as the district is proposing.
Well,
Right.
I think too, that one of the reasons we need to get this information out is because they will hear, oh, they're gonna close Pleasant View.
Mhm.
And that'll get,
Right.
not my school, not my school, not
Exactly.
my problem, right? Except that down in that little flyer that they have
Mhm.
down there, it talks about how they're going to distribute all these children to all schools in the district. It says all schools. So that means your school and your school and your school
Right.
and your school.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that is a big thing that we need to kind of highlight that this is not just affecting Cooper. This is not just affecting.
Exactly.
This is not just affecting Blizzard. This is affecting everyone.
And
It's
it
a
may say that
community-wide.
it's not gonna affect Englewood or Sweeney or whatever, but
It will,
it will. I mean, it's going to.
right.
This
And-
kind of shuffling and this kind of thing is gonna affect it, whether that's people wanting to transfer or not
Exactly.
getting to transfer that normally do transfer. I mean, it's gonna affect us all.
Exactly. Well, and one of the things that I wonder about as well is transfer rates at other schools. We heard at the site council meeting that Pleasant View is the most requested elementary school to transfer into in the entire district. There's a reason for that, and they're wanting to close it. And they're closing it for logistical reasons, which is what's outlined in the frequently asked questions document. But there's so much more than just logistics that happen at that school.
That's gonna be an important consideration, because the messaging on what this group you do on the website is gonna be critical, not just the first perspective that somebody coming to that website gives, but also the message we give, the organization gives,
Exactly.
that then the district can respond to. Because we get painted as citizens against virtually everything who hate kids in schools.
Exactly.
It's a done deal, because
Right.
they have the bigger megaphone, they will make that point, I guarantee it.
Mhm.
And so, one of the things that's gonna be really, really critical is, we care about our schools, but we care long-term realistically, because this impacts a lot of other schools. It has implications that aren't being talked about by the district. And that is what will bring people
Right.
to the district.
That's why we changed from Project Pleasant View, because we realized very quickly that this is not just a Pleasant View issue. Because initially when we heard about it, all we heard from Mrs. Rothy was at the site council meeting at the school last month, they were going to be talking about the possible closure of the school. And so of course, that got lots of parents' attention, and we realized, very quickly that they're talking about closing our school. We're not okay with this. But then as we started kind of diving into it, going to the school board meeting and talking things through, we realized, wait a second, this is going to be impacting like every school in Derby, essentially. And it's just something that, they're closing Pleasant View. You're right. It is everybody. And they're talking most about having El Paso and Derby Hills and Park Hill absorb the majority of these students. And that's why they're wanting to make those schools larger. It'll be anywhere from a 3 to a 4-section school. Yeah.
Well, they just enlarged Derby Hills. Derby Hills just had an addition.
Right.
And they are almost at capacity now.
Right.
So where are they gonna move?
Right. Yeah.
I wanna know their big long-term plan as far as, are we gonna keep hodgepodging schools?
Mhm.
Like, is the Derby district here to provide a great education for our students and make them good members of our community, or are they here to grow one NFL player?
Right.
Because,
Or warehouse?
Yeah.
Are we running a school system or a warehouse?
right, I have
Just let us know.
a friend that was talking about she has a daughter that graduated from Derby. And then she's homeschooled her other son, and how the difference between going to another suburban district school, how everything inside the school, and this is a district with a good football team
Mhm.
too at one of their high schools. And she was talking about the difference. Everything inside was about education and how great these students are doing and how all these things. But you go to Derby and it's not that way. And like, what's Derby doing to keep up with what other districts are doing?
Mhm.
Painesville added the IB program. What is Derby doing to stay competitive with academics?
Yeah.
And that's what I want to know. And I graduated from the IB program at East, but I also played soccer growing up. I went to college on a soccer scholarship, so I understand the importance of athletics
Mhm.
and the lessons that you can learn from it and the teamwork, but it is not everything. And most of these kids are going to graduate and they're not going to go play NFL football. They're not even going to play in college, and is the district worried about making them good community members so that they can, function as adults, or do they care about athletics?
Right.
And so that's my frustration, because
Sure.
I know both sides of it.
Yeah.
And, it's super frustrating.
Sure.
to me.
Yeah, I definitely understand your point there. I grew up in a school environment. My sister's 9 years older than me. And so we went through the same school district, but it was a much different school district for what she went through and what I went through. And, you know, with her being older, it was much more athletic focused. And by the time I was going through, the district had really shifted gears a lot, and it was okay to not be an athletic person. And I really don't have a lot of experience with the athletic side of Derby. I'm relatively new to Derby, but I know kind of what you're speaking to. I haven't experienced that firsthand, but, you know, I've heard of that
I
here.
have a coworker whose kids go to Derby Hills,
Mhm.
and she's very concerned because she has a son who's in 5th grade, and she's like, I have to get him into sports because in Derby, you have to play a sport, you know, or be good at something, or else, you know, like she feels that pressure,
Mhm.
you know, and I could care less, but there's people that feel that way,
Mhm.
and that's not the type of community I want to be in,
Sure,
where people feel that pressure.
sure. Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
I used to cover education for one of the watchdog groups, national watchdog groups, and Kansas Education. Derby District has a good history of being fiscally responsible and doing a good job, being good stewards with their taxpayers. What got me to this meeting is the concern about, holy cow, did you look at the amount of money they want to spend on this and some of the gold-plated things.
Mhm.
I'm really worried as a taxpayer in this district. My kids are all grown. I have 6 kids, but I have grandkids going to school here. I'm really concerned that they're losing that they're getting out of touch. And I'm concerned about that, not just for this particular issue, but that the Derby School District is becoming more like a lot of other districts where every member of the board is a rubber stamp for the superintendent. That we have inverted the way that schools are supposed to be governed in this country,
Mhm.
which is the citizens elect the board members who hire and supervise the superintendent.
Right.
One of the things I plan on doing, and I used to do for a lot of districts, is go to the board meetings and videotape the interactions at the meeting. If our board president is sitting next to the superintendent and getting all of the instructions from the superintendent or the board lawyer, then we have a problem. If the board votes are 7-0 almost exclusively, we have a problem, because we should have members on the board who are asking the same kind of questions we are and aren't getting shut down. You mentioned Hayesville. I did a lot of coverage on Hayesville because they had a board member who was elected against the rest of the board's wishes.
Mhm.
And she asked a lot of questions, and she was literally shut down and hounded off of the board because she wanted answers to some of these kind of questions. I'm personally concerned that Derby's going in that direction.
When Shannon told me that they were gonna close Pleasant View, I kind of Googled it to see like, what, where are they closing Pleasant View? To see like if I could find anything from the district.
And there was nothing.
Well, except there was, that Wilford's been trying to close Pleasant View for years.
Yeah.
Like, there's history back to like 2012 or 10 or whatever. He is constantly trying to close Pleasant View, and I'm curious, like, is it always the same reason?
Mhm.
Is there a new reason each time? Is he just trying to find the right reason that finally gets done, or?
And
Like,
why is he
why-
doing that when people like that school and want
Especially,
to transfer
right,
into
if
it?
people
Well, and it's-
transfer to Pleasant View, then that school is succeeding.
Right,
That
and-
school is meeting the needs.
Mhm.
People, there's another school in Derby, I know that we have tons of transfers from that school,
Mhm.
and the parents come to Sweeney and they say, I'm so glad I'm out of that school.
Yeah.
So why aren't we looking at that school and saying, what's not working right here?
Mhm.
I'm sorry, which school did you say?
I didn't say, I was trying
It
to.
was just a generic, another school in the
There's
district.
another school that in Derby that a lot of people transferred to Sweeney from and have not enjoyed being at. And
I just
so,
wondered if it was the same one.
anyway,
We can touch base on that later.
but if there's something not working at that school, then why aren't we looking at that school and saying, what's not working here? Whereas Pleasant
Right.
View, it is working.
Yeah, why aren't we looking at, okay, let's find out where everybody wants to go. What are they doing?
And
why
let's do
they
that.
wanna go?
Not, let's close that school that's working.
Yeah, I agree. What I really want to know is, we're sitting here in this meeting and we're talking amongst ourselves,
Mhm.
and we have all of these questions. Surely, members of that committee, somebody had some questions, surely. Why are we not hearing that? Why are we not hearing any information about how they came to this conclusion? What were their
Yeah.
priorities?
And part of that is supposed to be coming from these community feedback meetings, because the committee is supposed to be sharing. I believe that the architectural firm that has come up with a lot of these plans is going to be doing the majority of the presentation. I could be incorrect in that. But they're going to be saying, okay, this is what we looked at logistically at all of the buildings. These are the things, and this is what our suggestions are. So that, to an extent, is going to be coming in these community feedback meetings, but then less than 2 weeks later, they're going to be making their formal recommendation about what's going to get voted on.
For alternatives, no time for
Right.
discussion, no time.
No time for the
Ready.
soft
That would be
issues.
why this group exists.
Let me provide a caution, because when Wichita did a bond issue, probably 6 years ago, 5 years ago, they had a lot of these kind of meetings.
Mhm.
The meetings were broken into groups of people, so 300 people show up, they made 10 tables and split the people up. At each table was a mentor who had been coached by the district about how to lead the meeting. And I went around and I watched a lot of these tables, and they guided people to the answers they wanted. And then they were able to say, oh yes, we're good. We're good to go. They had already made up their mind. They have already done made their plans. Part of what worries me about this one too is, who is this architectural firm?
Mhm.
Are they in line to get work out of the stuff that's going on here? Are they already decided, yeah, we're gonna build new schools, so we're gonna make this happen, because that is what happens in Wichita.
Yeah, the architectural firm, I believe, helped with the last bond issue. They've been around and helping the district for quite a while.
There's your answer right there.
So, I mean,
Why didn't they hire somebody
yeah,
who was independent?
right.
Well, why are we even talking to an architectural firm before the plans are firm?
Right.
We should say, this is what we wanna do, then go put out bids for 3 or 4 different places.
Right.
Well, or even find out from the community, what do we want to change in our schools? Do we want to make bigger schools? Do we want to make more small schools? What do we like that we have? What do we need to change? And it seems to me that none of that has been public. That's all been from within this small group, so we don't even know how they were deciding.
Right. Yeah.
I was gonna say, I kind of, to go with a lot of this, I looked through the numbers from the state of Kansas, through, as far as funding, because we mentioned like Goddard and their schools,
Mhm.
everything. I'm not the best numbers person. The data is honestly kind of hard to get through that the state has on funding and things like that.
Right.
From what I could tell, and I might be wrong, but it appeared that we're paying more per student than a lot of the other districts. We may not have high mill levy, but we've got a very large tax base to spread it over.
Mhm.
Like Goddard, it looked like we're paying more per student than Goddard is. So look at that. How much of that is debt servicing? How much of that money that we're paying for these students is just to pay for the massive, obnoxious new middle school?
Mhm.
It's gorgeous. It's on the most expensive intersection in town. Are we doing that again? I mean, how much money of this is just gonna be for that? How much of this are we spending on just nice looking buildings?
Right.
And the thing on education, Derby now has a reputation of being very poor for special education. People moved out of district, friends of ours moved out of district because special education funding has been cut and they're basically pushed out. That's a problem that Shannon mentioned the IB program. We don't have that. We need something like that.
Mhm.
I graduated in 2000. I graduated midway through my senior year. I'd taken all the math classes available. I had nothing else to do. We haven't fixed that, and that was too many years ago.
We need more options on both ends of the spectrum. for
Right.
that, Because what do you
We've
do
got-
with a bored kid or a kid that needs more help?
Well, and one of the things that has me concerned, because I have a child who is, how do I put this nicely? He's an active guy. We'll say that. He's in, huh?
He's a little boy.
He's all boy, all little boy, and that's that. You know, he does his thing. Well, he is in the. He attends the preschool program that they have at Pleasant View, and that's one question I have. Where's the preschool program going to go? It's an all-day preschool program. It's there for a reason, helping kids with specific needs, be it special education or lots of different needs. Where's that going to go? But he needs a more structured environment. There's already big changes happening with him. He needs it. How is El Paso, which is, I mean, looking at it at the map, you know, chances are we're probably going to end up at El Paso, is my guess. It's an open concept school. Oh, that's bad for that kid. there's some kids that will flourish in that environment, but am I going to be in a position of requesting a different school for my child every year? And that's one of the concerns that I have. But hang on just one second, Drew. I think we would talk about a couple of different things back and forth for a few more minutes. And then I'd really like to have some good input on how we communicate this to the community, because we don't want to be the whiners that are like, we don't want our school closed. We want to be taken seriously. We want this to be about Derby as a community, including Oak Lawn and Cooper. Do these schools want to be closed? Do they want to be combined? How is it going to affect these things? And the point from David on Facebook is incredible. How are they going to get kids across 47th Street? Has that stuff been looked at? So I, start brainstorming as we get through these last couple of questions of how can we present this out so that we are not whiners, because we're not. We have solid concerns, and we're not just complaining here. And we definitely don't want to be perceived that way. So
I think we should make sure that we are perceived as advocating for our children, because that's the thing that makes me the most angry. And I think Drew's kind of saying that, like, you get painted as the bad guy, like you don't care about schools, if you don't want to vote for this, which isn't true. I care deeply about my kids' education. I'm at every site council meeting. I'm at every PTA meeting. Like, I care about my kids, and I care about the kids in Derby and that they're getting a good education. I think if we come across that way, that we care about our community and the children in our community, I think that's going to be a lot better than coming across, I don't want to do that.
exactly, right.
A quick answer for your question about the data. KSDE, Derby District, they're terrible about making data accessible. There's a shortcut to that at kansasopengov.org. It's a site that is a data warehouse operated by Kansas Policy Institute. It has the school districts love to hate them, but their data is all legit data. So one of the options to do
Can you
it,
repeat that site,
kansasopengov.org.
Thank you.
And you can go there, and they have headers that are easy to find and track down to get whatever you want. One of the recommendations I would have, though, is if we use that data, that we track it back to the KSDE original source. We give people both. So, because one of the things those schools will throw at us is they'll say, "Oh, well, that's that Kansas Policy Institute. They hate kids, blah blah blah," which is total baloney. But so that's one opportunity, and it would be important for us if we're going to look at any kind of data to support the contentions, that we have somebody who is good with the data and knows how to access it and make good use of it.
Okay.
So if you're a math guy, I nominate you.
Some days.
Yeah, go ahead.
One thing that also is kind of concerning from an educator's point of view is at Pleasant View, we have 2 classes per grade level. So then the kids go to music one day and PE one day, and then Friday they split that. Well, if you have 4 classes, okay. But if I have 50 fifth graders in PE, that doesn't, like, we already have issues with that, with my class getting along, So then, okay, so are we gonna double up?
Well,
the
and
students in the PE, or are we gonna have 2 separate classes going?
Right.
Well, if you have 2 separate classes, don't you need 2 separate music rooms? Don't you need 2 separate gyms? That's something that also needs to be looked at, because, not to complain, but as a teacher, I don't wanna get gypped on plan time that is already.
well, and salary for these teachers as well, handling twice as many students.
It's not fair to the kids. Kids
Right.
can't sit still all day. And then if they only have PE once a week, that's not fair to the kids. They need that physical activity. They need that music. They need that having art only once a week for like 30 minutes. And it's just, for the kids and the teachers, it's not, I mean, it's hard to do at Pleasant View with being such a smaller school, let alone if we double the amount of classes that we have in a building. So that's like, well, how are you gonna work that?
Lunch and
Right.
recess is another huge
Yeah.
mess.
Yeah, I mean, looking at those kind of things, like, I could not imagine having,
Lunch at Swaney starts at like 10:45 and it doesn't end. My son goes to lunch at 12:30 or 12:40. And so my son, we have the last name Answer. It's really unfortunate for him. So he's at the back of the line. So if there were 4 classes and his class was the last one to go to lunch, he's gonna be in line for lunch for so long that he may not even have time to eat his lunch before they're going out to recess.
Or he'll miss his recess.
Or he'll miss
My
his recess
child
entirely. I tell Mrs. Reese, last year, Mr. Recess, all the time, because she didn't have enough time to eat.
Right, and these are things that they need to think about when they're saying there's gonna be 4 kids in this lunchroom that maybe isn't meant for, or 4 classes.
Right.
Right,
Yeah.
and how are they gonna get all these kids through this lunch line?
Mhm.
You know, and a lot of your kids, if they're coming from Title I, maybe are on free and reduced lunches, so that means they're going through the hot lunch line. These are not kids who are packing with basket and going to
Right.
sit down, they're waiting.
Well,
To
and
get
their
that's
food.
a long wait from what my 5th graders eat last at the end of the day. From 8 o'clock, even if they have breakfast, which is not always a hearty, full of protein kind of breakfast in those pack-a-sack breakfasts.
Mhm.
Pop-Tart, you know, it's not gonna stick with them. So then from 8 o'clock to 12:30, they're growing kids, they're hungry.
Mhm.
You know, and so like my class, we do snacks mid-morning. But it's not, that doesn't make sense either, because then are they gonna help provide it mid-morning, you know? Like,
Right.
Kids can't think or learn if they're hungry.
Right.
So I don't know if those things have been thought of with, we want these bigger schools.
But it's the logistics versus focusing on the people part of it, and that's where we need to focus. Yeah, definitely.
I mean, that's just staff, take care of your staff,
Right.
or, you know, so.
And that is too, what they're thinking for like indoor recesses. I know indoor recess is going to be doing the commons.
Oh, they do?
So
Okay.
if you had 4 classes
Yeah.
of 25 kids all sitting in the commons trying to do indoor recess, that's 100 kids in a, it's not a huge area, the commons
Yeah.
is not huge. Like, have we thought through all of these different scenarios, right?
Mhm.
Because through the winter time, there's a lot of indoor recess.
Yeah. Yeah.
Springtime and rain.
My experience with that and a lot of the Wichita schools is they do it in classrooms. So they have it within the classrooms and kids could pick like one classroom is a games classroom, one is more of a physical activity, you know, within reason kind of thing. So they can switch.
And then the supervision of that for having it in the classrooms. Luckily for us, we have the 2 pairs at lunch, so one goes to one classroom, one's in the other classroom. Okay, well, if you have 4, you only have, you know, like
Right.
covering that, then I'm losing my duty-free lunch.
Right.
And teachers need that.
Right.
They need that break.
Well, that's part of the reason why there's so many, you know, union issues in Wichita right now.
Yeah,
So
and so I don't know if, one of the good question to ask, did we think of that as well
mhm.
in this? And I don't think there's very many people that are actually in the school or in the education classroom
Mhm.
that were on that committee. And if there was, they were not listening. Like, it was a very strong, one-sided kind of road, not that. of a
Right.
party.
And is that
Yeah.
amount of money that they're going to have to come up with to hire more parents so that they can take care of children at lunch?
Where's that money coming from?
And
Right.
what they've told us is that like Pleasant View staff, well, if the kids are spread out, don't worry, you'll have a job and you'll be spread out too.
Mhm.
Could also be a concern, a 5th grade teacher maybe getting put into kindergarten.
Right.
So I mean, those, I don't know if the inside functions. how to
Right.
handle them, So it might be a.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Candace.
I think we also need to focus on how do we get, we know we have gotten Pleasant View's attention,
Mhm.
but how does Cooper feel about this and, Oaklawn? Like, do they know about this? Because we've already had one person bring up important issues. What about their important issues as well?
Mhm.
And that's even a larger circumference that we
Right.
need to somehow reach and get involved in as
Right.
well, so that we have a bigger support base.
Are they on Derby Water? I don't know if we could stick something, and it's too late for the meetings for this.
I
month,
don't
but
think. I
if
don't
we
know.
could
They're in
stick something
Wichita.
In the water bill mailers.
Can you do that?
Well, they
Sure,
put, there's a
so-
city newsletter in it. So,
Well, that would get the attention of everybody out. I mean, maybe
Yeah.
not Cooper and Oaklawn, so then we can.
Yeah.
focus on
but
that.
at least
Thing for that, but maybe
we can stick it.
We're-
community meetings coming up.
I'm just available.
I've already gotten my bill for this month though.
Well, yeah, but at least
On the
for
library.
February.
Library's good, yeah. So this is a good brainstorming topic then. How do we get this information out? So mailer with the city.
Yeah, because if we
Library.
can stick something with a water bill on that newsletter that comes.
And we mentioned putting it like on the Little Dillons, their bulletin board, and getting it out to the businesses of a flyer, hey, community, kind of like that little flyer that we got of the basic
And it is affecting all schools.
Mhm.
Attention, all schools. Attention, all parents. Like everybody. It's gonna involve everybody. Just getting our little flyers out.
I'd ask the school district to distribute that information, and then if they refuse, I trumpet that.
We've already asked that.
You've asked them to distribute it, will they do it?
I told them the mail, said, if you're gonna close the school, I said every house that's in that boundary needs to be mailed a statement.
Well, and also, the districts ought to be making people aware of meetings like this, where people are discussing alternative perspectives. So otherwise, the district is running its own game on how are we gonna decide what to do.
And isn't that a conflict of interest?
What's that?
Not making known what's actually happening and just promoting your own plan.
It's controlling the message, but I think, like I say, I think we go to them and say, we're having these other meetings, we wanna have the best schools possible. We'd like you to distribute information about our meeting schedule, and that we're having these meetings.
If like Sweeney's PTS decided we're gonna pay for and print these flyers and distribute them in Thursday packets, is there any reason we couldn't do that?
I don't see why not.
So could we ask each of our schools PTAs to, because it's not that much to print
Mhm.
300 flyers.
Yeah.
And then it gets home to every school family at least.
Mhm.
I'm relatively positive ours would.
Yeah, so that's where, I'm not really sure where the line exists, because at some point there is a line between being a political organization versus, a community advocacy type thing. And for us, one of the things that we've got in our back pockets is a GoFundMe page. It's not ready to go just yet, but I've got it with the intention of, right now it's a little soon. We've got these meetings coming up. We need people there. We need voices heard. We need bodies. But if the district goes ahead with closing the school, not paying attention to these education concerns that we have got to have signs. We've got to have a much more community-wide effort, and that's where the GoFundMe page is going to come in.
So couldn't we come up with some flyer that's just basic information? This is what the school district is planning. These are the meetings coming up. We're not saying what you should or shouldn't do or what you should or shouldn't think, but just
Right.
This is what is happening.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see that there should be any conflict in sending that.
So like, did you know?
Right, did you know
Mhm.
the school district has these plans? These are these meetings that you can come and ask questions and hear answers. We'd like you to be involved, period. Like just something that simple. And why, I don't see why the district should be against that if all we're saying is come and listen and make an opinion.
Do they not want people to come?
Right,
No,
they should want people to come.
They don't.
they don't.
They have their process.
But they can't say that loud.
Right. Right.
But I don't see why that would be a bad idea, or why, I don't know what they could say, like, no, don't tell them what our meetings are. Like,
Mhm.
we should be able to say when their meetings are.
Right. Yeah.
Even printing off their little, if we could somehow cover the cost to print off and distribute their own little flyer on,
Mhm.
we want to spend $88 million, close schools, ship kids across town, take it or leave it.
Yeah.
Just because that flyer was a whole bunch of information on nothing.
Are you meaning that one right there?
No, the one online.
The one on the website?
Yeah,
Yeah.
their master plan.
Yeah.
I mean, it's out there.
It says close Pleasant View, and then it has a whole bunch of
It's a
stuff
little
after
tiny
it.
bullet point.
Mhm.
That's exactly how it was in the school board meeting too. Did you have something?
Mine is, I talked to some people and they go, but it's already a done deal, we can't do nothing. And I go, no, it's not.
Really? Oh, yeah, that's really important.
I
Yeah.
was walking through Walmart and I already overheard parents talking, well, we're just gonna have to transfer them out of Pleasant View. We're wondering if we should just transfer next year, but the school's gonna close, why not just transfer now?
Well, the teachers are gonna start failing,
Right.
especially the ones that are.
Because Pleasant View is an amazing school to work at. Right? It's a great
It's my 10th
place.
year there, it's my family.
It's a great school.
That's why I'm here, not.
There's nothing there that there's just, it's unparalleled. It's just such a great community.
Heard parents from Derby Hills and El Paso say that they would be unhappy with their schools being added on to again
Hmm.
and having more students at their school. And
Yeah.
I'm sure the teachers were too.
Right. Okay, so.
Communicate that.
Right. So this is all about communication and making sure that we are doing our best about this. So a did you know flyer, can we get this out to the PTAs? Make sure you've got good notes about this. My paper's full. So can we get this out within school backpacks? Because there is time to get that out. At Pleasant View, let's see, we'll have 2 Thursday folders that'll go home in kids' backpacks before these meetings happen. So is that something that we're okay to send out? Did you know about these upcoming meetings?
I have a meeting tomorrow and I'll bring it up.
Yeah.
And see what they say.
Good deal.
The principal will be there, so
Yeah.
we'll bring it up and see. And I just did a quick calculation. I think it would cost less than $20 to distribute to all of our Swaney families.
That's not bad at all.
No, it could be
Yeah.
even less if it's not a full sheet. Like, it's not gonna cost that much, so I'm fairly positive that our PTA would be happy to cover.
And do we have
The cost of
access to all the PTAs? I know we know who it is at Pleasant View.
Right.
Do we know who it is like at all the schools to see if they would be willing to do that? And could we maybe contact Ken's printing to see if he would help us with the cost?
That's who we go through, and it's fairly expensive already.
Do you have contact with them directly by chance?
Yeah, I email them quite a bit.
Okay.
We spend all the time I can.
Yeah, if that's something that you would be willing to check into and let us know about that, that would be good. Because one of the things where we tend to hit our limits is, I'm relatively new to Derby, and we're a small but mighty group, and so we've got to see exactly where our resources are. So we're definitely going to tap into them whenever available.
I asked, can we see if we can get like colored paper? That way it's not just
Right.
mixed up in the, that'd be good too,
Just
If I see it's 500, white papers, I'm like, ugh,
No, we always do color.
awesome.
Just a
Bright
reminder,
green.
Bright orange.
Probably most of the people in this room have lived here, I don't know, anybody here lived here more than 20 years? Okay, so a few of us have. Anybody here remember back to 1991 when most of the city council and the mayor were voted out because they decided something that the citizens didn't want? The mayor was voted on a write-in ballot. They had a write-in mayor and several write-in members of the city council.
Wow.
Because they decided something that the city citizens
Democracy
did
in
not
action.
want.
That's incredible.
Derby has a great history for that. We
Okay.
can tap into that. I think that still exists in Derby.
Okay. Yeah. Well, and
in
that's-
the community knowing, because a lot of those people probably don't have kids in school, so like getting
Mhm.
those, a lot of my neighbors are retired people.
Right.
They don't have kids that, that go to Pleasant View.
Mhm.
They did. So that's why we gotta get our community
Mhm.
in the know.
Right. Okay. So this comes back to Drew.
I'm sorry, go ahead. Can you-
So in my mind, this comes back to the GoFundMe page to an extent, because we've already taken all the steps that we need to in order to have, money flowing if necessary. It's going to cost to do these things. There's a cost of the website, which I have footed the bill for that so far, but this is going to start costing. So the GoFundMe page needs to be finished. And one of the reasons why I haven't advertised the GoFundMe page very much, it's gofundme.com/save-derby-schools. It needs to be Save Derby Schools. It'd be easier. But I haven't advertised it because, there's not a whole lot on there. You have to have, like a mission statement, what your cause is and things like that. And that's one of the things that I've been cognizant of being the whiner, because we don't want to do that. Because we definitely want to make sure that this is a community felt issue. And if you're going to a page like that, what would you want to see? What would catch your attention? What would make okay, this is important. The school district isn't getting the word out. I need to help these people do it because they're obviously figuring this out and they're doing their best. So brainstorm, folks.
I think the biggest thing for the community at large is people who don't have children in the schools, because they're not gonna care as much about the classroom size.
Right.
Sadly, is the sticker price.
Mhm.
$88 million.
Yeah, it's a lot. And
That's
it,
an
yeah,
outrageous amount of money.
right. And
that would get their attention.
definitely.
Just on
Yeah.
this, 67 million.
Since we just had a bond issue,
Mhm.
we want another one.
Yeah.
Right.
So what our mission is that we want to inform the community of Derby
Mhm.
of what's going on.
Right.
Because we would be making flyers, so then we can inform people of important meetings. We would be making signs to also inform people. That's what our website's for, is to get people information.
Mhm.
So I think that's the whole mission to that, well, to inform people That's the only reason why we need funds.
To inform
Yeah.
and engage the citizens of Derby and the school district.
I like it.
Well, and I think if we're gonna ask for money and if we're gonna wanna keep people engaged, I think we need to like really keep updating the website and
Mhm.
constantly be adding new content and saying, these are the questions we're asking, these are the answers we're getting, and
Right.
and constantly having it, because if you go one time and there's not a whole lot there and there's no reason to come back,
Right.
you're not engaged.
Definitely.
You need to be
Mhm.
And it's sort of an undercurrent, and I don't know, I haven't looked at the data on Derby District lately, is just the concept of the citizens being in charge again. Like I said before, the school governance has become inverted. It's exactly the opposite way it's supposed to be in most districts, where the superintendent tells the board members what they ought to be voting on, how they ought to be voting, and the board members ignore the citizens. It happens all over the country, there are studies about it. I don't know if Derby's gone that way. Other local districts have.
I think that was mentioned in our last meeting, the idea of it's a meeting in public versus a public meeting.
Right.
Exactly.
That was mentioned in the last meeting.
Right.
Meeting in public, yeah, not a public.
Right.
But when you have school board members in local districts who say, you know, it's our meeting and we get to run it the way we want to. When citizens are trying to ask questions and get information published, that's ridiculous.
Well, that's what I'm trying to find. I mean, but I'm one person, and when I bring something up, I get shut down. So the more people that stand up at board meetings and say, why can't I ask a question and get an answer? The better we are, that's gonna change policy.
And one other thing that I would strongly recommend is any board meeting, any public meeting that the board holds, somebody videotape it. It's just so cheap and easy. Just take your local camcorder, put it on a tripod, set it out of the way somewhere where everybody's gonna trip on it, and you run it the whole meeting. And I have had school boards,
They hate that.
they absolutely hate that.
They really hate it.
And
If it's at City Hall, it's televised, it's recorded.
I'd say record it independently anyway, because some of those recordings disappear.
Yeah.
Do a Facebook Live.
Well, that may be helpful. That may help
It's
get more people
Facebook
to it.
Lives are recorded also.
Right.
Like right now, I'm live streaming on YouTube and Facebook, and eventually I'll be able to live stream directly from the Safe Derby Schools website. So we can live stream.
Well,
Well,
I think it would be great too.
That may be
for
helpful.
who is on the board.
Facebook Lives are recorded also.
Their opinions,
Mhm.
you know? So they're not kind of just hidden, like, we know who you are, we get to vote for you.
Right.
What are you voting for? Are you voting for our children? Are you voting just to go along with Mr. Wolford?
Mhm.
Or because you really like football? Or, you
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like, we should know who they are. And that would be great to get that information out too, is who's on our school board and are they standing up for us and asking questions and, and being our advocate, because that's what they're supposed to do. And if they're not doing that, then they're not doing their job.
Right.
And this is their email address. Please contact them if you have questions.
They're on there. Yeah.
And that's an
Email
important
address has been on there for the last 2 weeks, and I haven't received one.
You haven't gotten any. Okay.
That's a problem. One of the things Derby has going for it, correct me if I'm wrong, Derby board members have official Derby USD emails.
Mhm.
Most districts and our state school board do not, and that's specifically so that they are not discoverable by open records requests.
And that's another thing to think about.
Yeah,
If
absolutely.
we can't get the information that we're looking for, then
Mhm.
we ought to start following open records requests.
Yeah.
Tell me what you talked about in your last school board meeting. Tell me what you talked about 6 months ago. You have 3 days.
Well, they have 3 days to respond, whether they're gonna respond and how they're gonna respond.
I don't believe
Laws are
minutes.
vague, yeah.
I don't believe there's any requirement in state law for minutes at school board meetings.
They-
It's allowed to have
Isn't
agendas.
it an open, I thought it was, if it's an open meeting, then that they have to provide you with that. don't they?
No, in the minutes, they
No,
can
it-
take
it's-
what they call skinny minutes.
Yeah, they don't have to, most of it
Yeah,
doesn't
it's
have to.
Rand.
And
Ran.
by the state Kansas School Board, we're not required to give patrons 5 minutes to stand up and speak either.
Right.
We do that out of the great graciousness of our hearts.
Right, and it's all ridiculous, that's the whole thing, I could go on for years, but anyway.
But that's kind of the thing, if
I'll
our
send
school
you some
board
links.
isn't gracious enough to
That
hear
would be
us,
good.
the bigger school
Stories
board
of
is not
School board
meeting
governance.
our votes.
That would be good. Thank you.
They're not listening, they're up there texting or,
Right.
on Facebook or whatever, it's
Oh,
not,
we're taking 2 cameras.
it's.
And it's because.
Come join us at Pleasant View on the 9th.
We will be there.
I love our
Here's the
school.
short version of that. It's Kansas education system, just like most districts, most states around the country, is run by the establishment school interests, which in Kansas is the Kansas Association of School Boards, which is the state version of the National School Board Association, which has a very specific agenda. if you're a member of the school board and you contact KASB to ask for a question or ask for something, they will tell you they can't talk to you unless you get a vote of the majority of your school board to provide information. But the superintendent can call KASB and get whatever he wants anytime. That to me is extremely telling.
I called them over the transgender open meetings problem and got their runaround, and I said, look, I'm not hanging up this phone until I get an answer.
They don't want to work with you.
No.
They do want to work with the superintendent. Our system has been flipped. And I'm just praying and hoping that Derby isn't that way, and that's going to probably be a major issue in this whole thing we're talking about.
I'm so, okay, like all the site councils, is there a way to work, because the site councils are supposed to be telling each school what's going on, and this is,
From what I know, the other schools know nothing about the impact to their schools. Swaney, we're gonna get more students, I guarantee it.
I'm sure.
and talk to.
They say we're not, but I'm sure we
Yeah,
are.
and
Mhm.
But it has to do with boundaries. Right, yeah.
And they just did that, and that was expensive to do. I'm sure that it
And
was.
that was a little uproar in the community.
Right. Well, and some of the students at Pleasant View got split up.
and also transportation is going,
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
one way or another, either the parents have to transport or.
Right. Right.
I guess, kind of, I'm thinking of everything I'm hearing and the ways to communicate. I think some flyers would be good,
Mhm.
but also on the website, maybe segment out different schools and the impact from the proposal of that school. So that it's not just Pleasant View and Cooper, it's, well, my kids go to Tanglewood, I could click on Tanglewood and see the impact on Tanglewood. We could also maybe have something that just presents the school's plan, the district's plan in one location.
Mhm.
Instead of having to search it.
Right.
Just kind of condense everything down to make it where it's easier to access,
Mhm.
to kind of increase that visibility
Sure.
with it. And also as we get emails and questions sent and answered,
Mhm.
we got a place to just kind of keep a
Like the
running
frequently asked
correspondence
questions.
of this question was asked, here was the answer.
Right.
It's going to increase, I think it would increase the visibility and
Also credibility.
the credibility. Also, if we
Right.
we can keep, have that email forwarded,
Mhm.
keep it. That way it's documented.
Right.
Just make sure if we put something up on it just has to be documented to back up where it's coming from. So we don't get accused of making something up.
One of the things I would suggest too is on the website, tell people, if you would, please email, ask for information, give your opinion, and CC or BCC a email address for our organization, so that we can track who's emailing. Because one of the other things that happens is that the people won't get responses back from board members or Wolford or whoever.
Mhm.
And then there's no way to say, well, I never got that. Well, if you got a CC,
Mhm.
you know that email went in. You know it was a
Right.
valid email address. You can pretty well guarantee it got received.
And you know what date it was.
Right. And so
Okay. That's definitely a good idea.
My other thought was
yeah.
just, we don't have a lot of time.
Right.
And so them getting asked the same question 1,000 times is just going to delay the process and
Right.
excuse not to give out information.
Right. Yeah, and one of the things that I have seen so far, you and I were kind of generating questions back and forth today. Each of you are hitting on something different. It's not, we're just not okay with school closing. We love the school, whatever. We're not okay with spending. It's a different issue for everybody. So if we've got, school board inboxes filling up with a whole bunch of different questions, that says something, I think. And coming back to the flyer idea, one of the things that we had discussed at our last meeting was doing some business cards, going around something business card size. They're cheap, easy to print. We can leave them in people's doors if they're not home. Just saying on the card, do you know about major changes proposed that would affect all Derby schools? That, in my opinion, should catch people's attention. If you have other verbiage, tell me. I'm not a marketing
I like the
person.
did you know, they have a question mark.
Right.
part of what I think goes with that, and this would be a good way, that all the things you talked about putting on there, the questions, the answers, I think there ought to be a way graphically to make it clear, here's what the school district is saying. here's what reality is. Here's the questions they're not asking. And just so that it's clear at a glance that they're pushing something over on us. If that's in fact, I mean, it may not be. It may be they're absolutely 100% honest and everything's, puppies and
Well,
roses, but.
And that's actually a good point too, is we need to make sure if they are telling us the truth, then we say, yeah, they told us the truth on
Right.
this, on this thing.
Right.
Because we don't want to
Really-
sound like we're like
Yeah, I mean,
chasing them down or hate them or whatever.
at this point, I really don't know one way or the other. I don't have reason to suspect the school district is doing something wrong here. I really
feel like
don't.
Anybody has enough information. to
Exactly,
know.
exactly. And that's the whole point of our group, is not necessarily to point fingers or assume that we're not getting information, or it's easy to feel like, there should be information out there. Where is it? That's where our questions lie. So not necessarily pointing the finger, assume everybody's innocent until proven guilty.
Right, and by highlighting, this is not information that the district's getting. We found this.
Right.
Then we make several good points. One, that the district's not having full disclosure and transparency. And two, that there's a need for further investigation and discussion. And that our organization, our website is a legitimate place to go to get some of that. Because
Okay.
people will generally default to the school district. We have a long-standing history of, just whatever government says, that's good, let's go there.
Mm-hmm.
And 80% of the board will just forward your emails to Wilford. So don't send them to Wilford.
Okay.
And that proves when Wilford answers your question, that's what's going on, and that's what's broke about our school district.
Yeah.
It is our responsibility as elected officials to answer those questions.
Okay.
Like I said last meeting, guy gets up, why was my kid's school bus late 3 times? 5 minutes before the meeting, we had a briefing. Hey, the school bus was late, it had a flat tire, it had a broken transmission, and this happened, the good driver got lost.
Mm-hmm.
But yet, we told the patron that stood up, we'll get Mr. Wolf to answer that question for you, give him your name.
Yeah.
That's BS.
I agree.
And if we ask one of our administrators a question and you can't answer it, then somebody else needs to be doing that job because that's their job.
Sure.
That's the way the school board meeting should be.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's definitely something where these people have got to be approachable. We've got to be able to get answers, and it can't be, I'm sorry, but not everybody has time for the CYA that happens within governmental institutions. And that's definitely something that, that's exactly what you just described. So,
But the Kansas Association of School Board wants it that way
Right.
because it covers CYOA, the district.
right.
And if we say something wrong, then we say something wrong. But this waiting, 2 weeks until we get an answer
Mm-hmm.
is ridiculous.
Yeah, and that too is a product of our society as being so lawsuit happy. It's a sad position. No matter which way you look at it, it's tough.
So you would like us to send questions to our school board members then?
Absolutely.
So many?
And
All our
as
questions.
many people as you
Many
can
different
talk
board
to.
members?
Yes, as many different school board members and as many different people as you can talk to about this, because the more we get coming and the more different questions that we get happening, because if we all send the same question, it's all going to be, so, the flood of questions that are legitimate and real need to be sent. And the school board has got to be hearing from us. It can't just be at these meetings only, because these meetings are going to be, an hour long? Realistically, maybe to run over to an hour and a half. They're going to have a time limit on how long the presentation is going to be. There's going to be a time limit on how long people are going to be able to speak, more than likely. That's based on assumption, but that's generally how public meetings go. So, we'll find out for sure. And whatever information I can find out, I will share on the website. But
Well, I
chances
would
are-
like Will said, they're gonna break out into smaller groups.
Mhm.
And there's gonna be someone from the district in each of these groups. And they're gonna compile those answers, just like the strategic planning committee.
Mhm.
Was operated by the Kansas Association of School Boards. We all had different views. At the end of that, the 5 subjects that were presented to the school board are what the school board wanted presented to.
Nice.
They had what those topics were gonna be.
okay.
So if that, I guess that raises a question I have. If that happens, do we want to try to split up to
Yes,
counter that?
yes, yes.
Yes, you wanna make sure that one
As
person.
far as
There's a
we
way
need
to
to,
prevent it.
Switching wheel at every table.
we need to split and be willing to
be squeaky.
But you need to have that talk sheet done before those meetings, so you know what your points are, and each person from your group is in one of those groups.
Right. Well, and there's 2 meetings. So we need to be, have as much people power at both meetings as possible. That's something that's important. And that brings up something too, that I didn't put on the agenda. There is a site council meeting at Pleasant View on the 10th. And they are going to be talking about this at the site council meeting at Pleasant View. So we might be able to get some additional information there as well. Did you have something?
Yeah. Hold on, I'm right.
Fast and furious.
So basically, I think that he's right. We need to have, as our Save Derby Schools Committee, we need to have talking points. We need to have specific things so that we come as a united front and not just, some people are here, some people are there, and that's great. We should have all these questions, but we need to have a uniform front so that we're taken serious by the school board. So I think that it's very important that you do get on to the Facebook website and post what is your biggest fear or what is your biggest question. So that way we can form a list of concerns.
I can create a Google feedback form, just like what I had already for Pleasant View.
Okay.
That's asking, what are your common concerns, so that we can.
I would say your home school, because if it's not all coming from Pleasant View.
Right.
That's gonna speak volume, saying.
Well, and that's
you have
where.
Somebody from every school.
Right.
Almost, ideally, from
Mhm.
every school at each table, and a lot of us have those concerns,
Mhm.
and it's not just Pleasant View.
Right.
That's gonna speak of, this is gonna involve everybody.
Having business cards ready to go for those people that are there, those are people that are active and engaged already.
Right.
Those would be good people to connect with, to expand the network.
And I think on our Facebook page, we need to address how us as a group can reach our community.
Mhm.
So what are our tools so that we can go reach? Because like you're saying, people from Swaney, people from Park Hill, people from all these other schools have no idea what's going on.
Right.
So we need to be active now to find out, to just get this information, or even.
So this weekend, it sounds like we need to figure out between now and this weekend how we can get some flyers printed.
I think by
and start
this
getting around the
Thursday
neighborhoods.
Because I know Pleasant View goes out every Thursday, and I know El Paso is kind of an everyday
Right.
thing. But I think we need to get those flyers, the Did You Know flyers with the planning meetings, our meetings and the school board meetings
Mhm.
in backpacks. That needs to happen this week, I feel like.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, that's kind of our soft hit. Hey, here's the meetings.
Mhm.
And that would at least get the word out to meetings, or, even a link on there for our website, so that, I didn't know this was going on. So
Right.
this is.
And
this
see,
is
that's
a-
where we
this
get
is a
kind
no-brainer
of.
plan. This is
Right. And that's where we're going to have to talk with school personnel to see what's going to be allowable within those packets and what's not. Because we're not sending them to a district website. On that, if I was looking at it from, assuming a principal's perspective here, granted I've never been a principal, but you have to be a representative of the district, and whatever you're allowing to be sent home, you can't be a political activist for your school. You can't send things like that. There's a line. So what is going to be allowed to
But
be
what I'm
on
saying
those
is
flyers?
can we not send meetings of, did you know, and have these meetings of the school board meetings
Mhm.
as well as our meetings because we're not,
No, if
We're
go to
not-
our meetings.
And location too.
in location.
That's what I was concerned about.
Yeah, I would definitely push to do that, and if you get any pushback saying we can't distribute that, I would scream that from the housetops. I would go.
Well, just because we're not, like you said, we're not trying to come as
Right.
pointing fingers at the district.
Mhm.
We want to inform people as to what, what the plan is.
Right.
And we want to help the district
Mhm.
have their voice be heard. And we want to help your voice be heard, and the
Right.
district wants to hear from you. So
Mhm.
here, here is where you can come find the information, put Project for Success, commonly asked questions on there.
Mhm.
Put our website on there, put other, don't just make it about our thing, so it's not, So it's objective.
Right. I see that being as this is a district thing that's going out. It's probably going to have to be district only information, more than likely. And that's where we run into some issues there. Yeah.
I was wondering, if you might be able to- I don't know if possible, I was thinking of ways to probably color in the lines and still get a different picture out of it.
Mhm.
We put the meeting dates and times, locations
Mhm.
on there just to, do you know, or something, then the official district stuff.
Mhm.
And then at the bottom, just put, paid for by Save Derby Schools.
Mm.
.com, something like that. It's not a call to action, it's just saying who paid for it, here it is. Something like that. I mean, I don't,
Supported by SaveDerbySchools.com.
because I don't think any of us want to get the wrath of the district at us.
No.
Well, and we're not
Especially
putting
till we're ready.
At the principals either.
Right.
Or
Well, and
Exactly.
ultimately, I mean, this is a collaborative thing. We work with the school district. The school district, in theory, is going to be working with the community, and we are the community. So we definitely don't want to be
Well,
pointing the
that's what I'm
finger.
saying, like,
Why
I
then-
don't want, I think there's something needs to be on there about,
Right, but there's an alternative track for getting this
yeah, because
discussion
if
going.
you just put
Right.
it
And
out
if they shut
there.
that down, I
Here's the
think
thing
that's
is,
what
if
it's
we
screaming.
send all these
Mhm.
people to district sites, and they're just going to get, oh, well, this is good then. This is
Well,
what, oh, okay, well, this is what they're doing, and they're gonna form the school district's perception of
Mhm.
it. So why would it not be, I mean, it's as an objective,
Right.
like I said, we're not saying, we want them to know what the school district is saying and proposing, and we also want them to know where their voice can be heard.
Mhm.
We're not trying to put, Derby, school board is bad, we don't wanna put that front out there, so why not work in tandem with them and
Right.
say, hey, we wanna bring attention to your meetings,
Hmm.
and then, but I feel like we do need to be included on there, and I don't see why it would be a conflict of interest.
I really
because
like the
we're-
paid for by Save Derby
Yeah.
Schools.
I have a question. Is
then how do
there
we pay for that?
any opportunity
Go
for us
fund
to
me.
have a face-to-face with the board members, just to
By
introduce
Thursday.
ourselves formally?
Yeah. We'll see.
I mean, where we can
At the
just,
meeting, I mean, you can contact. If you sent me an email saying that you wanted to meet with the board, we could add it to the agenda that you
Okay.
want to introduce yourself.
because I think that, I don't know how you feel, Becky, maybe you and I just introduce and
Mhm.
say we're just hoping to better engage the community.
I agree.
Just hopefully benign, not ruffle feathers, but it puts word out that there's some engagement from the community. The community's paying attention and interested.
I would do that, I'd get that email to the board before this Thursday,
Okay,
because that's when the agenda, I think you guys should stand up at the Pleasant View board meeting and say, introduce yourselves, what your goal as a group is.
is that, I think it would be highly visible.
We are the community's microphone,
Mhm.
like if we present ourselves that way and we're not as a opposition,
Right.
we're working in tandem to help you find what the community wants.
Mhm.
Do you know what I'm saying?
You can also just say you want to be included in the 5-minute patron talk and stand up at that time.
Okay.
Could we have I don't know who's making the flyer, the
Mhm.
or whatever, could we have that soonish, so I could take it to the meeting tomorrow and say this is what we would like to put in the packets, because then.
I don't know if
think
we could
there's-
have it by
I
tomorrow,
could
but we could
probably
have
pull
a
something together, like
version.
a PDF to,
Okay, because I'm just thinking if I
especially
can
if we're
tell
going
my
to school
principal,
generic.
this is what we want to send out, it's
Uh-huh.
easier than well, I don't know what you're sending.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? I think it would
Yeah.
be easier to show them, all it says is the board meetings and
Mhm.
Well, if
the
you
meetings,
put,
you
if
know.
Right.
you put the same information that's on the district website about the meetings,
Mhm.
and then on the bottom, just say paid for by SaveDerbySchools.com.
And our meeting schedules, right? If it's all about getting people out to talk about this issue, I really don't see why the school would have any justifiable reason to say, oh, no, only come to our meetings.
Mhm.
We're only gonna tell people about our meetings.
Well, yeah, because we're not, like I said, we're putting a view out as we want to be the community's microphone. That way,
So I could do 2 versions to see if either of them work. Unless there's,
Then we
do you have
can-
another idea?
Well, you'd have to schedule, if you guys schedule a meeting for the week before
Mhm.
the school's meetings. I'll get, if you send me an email requesting information, I will get you the information. That's my job.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
We
We're trying
appreciate
to-
you.
I've gotten told no before, and I had to have a conversation that, you didn't understand that wasn't a question, you're gonna give me the information. So,
Way to be.
well, that's my job.
Hey Becky, I was just gonna tell you that, I'm trying to send out the link for SaveDerbySchools.com
Mhm.
to my friends here on Messenger, I'm not just messing with my phone.
Yeah.
And it has the panda logo on it. Can we change that to just like a?
I've been messaging back and forth with somebody who's currently designing a logo for us right now. I've been multitasking during our meeting because we need one. And we've got one and a new Facebook thing.
Because she's
Yeah.
in El Paso, here, so
Yeah.
I'm trying to,
So I can,
you know what I mean?
Oh. yeah,
Okay.
let me,
Because if I type it in and then I send her a link on the iPhone, then
Mhm.
it has the panda logo.
yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Can we do like a megaphone, microphone until we get something?
Well,
Makes sense.
I can show you guys my computer, but I don't know that you want all of your faces to be on the Google Hangout. Let me share my screen really quick and then you guys can come see. Let me show you.
Hey Becky,
Yes,
I gotta go here soon.
sure. Come see guys. So nobody can see you, just so you know. This is being shared. My screen is what's being shared right now. So Save Derby Schools, SaveDerbySchools.com, SDS, Derby Colors. Work for you guys?
Yeah, let's try it.
Yep. So that's something that I had in the works already. So yeah, and that's something that I can get fixed. I can work that right now, actually.
Okay, that way I can
Um,
start, yeah, I'm just trying to send everybody that I
Yeah,
know. Explain that.
because it needs to. I didn't drop my phone.
PTA or whatever they call it. El Paso, they're pregnant as one of their teachers.
Yes. Yes.
So my husband knows.
Okay.
So I was gonna have my husband.
And if
Okay.
you send me the flyer, I'll go into Wilford's office myself and say, these need to go in all the Thursday packets.
Okay. I'll see if I can put something together, try to get it posted up to Drive. It'll just take a few minutes.
How are we
hopefully.
gonna know they actually get distributed? We'll find them in our, I know, but just us, our schools.
Well, We go to Swaney. I have
How many
parents-
schools do we have here?
I-
No, I mean like in here.
We have
That's
Swaney.
Well, I know a few teachers at a couple.
You know some.
Yeah. I was
Just because
because
Swaney in class too.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and just so you guys are aware, I'm going to wrap up the Google call and everything. So thank you everybody for joining us.